Major Arya is a well-read man, and he has spoken in many places, and he's now widely known. We are today on a very important topic, which is of vital consequence for our security in the future, and that is the issue of Afghanistan and the pending issue of the POK, that is the Pakistan occupied Kashmir territory, which is part of Jammu Kashmir, but due to our mistakes or folly, we froze the matter when we could have taken the whole of Kashmir in 1947. The immediate provocation for the urgency, which caused the urgency for discussing this subject, is the February 29th, 2020 agreement between the United States and Taliban. Now, Taliban is not a part of any government. It was, in fact, an enemy of the United States. The United States, after that 9/11 atrocity, actually bombarded Afghanistan when Taliban was in power, and decimated a big proportion of their armed forces, and made them run into the hills. And then now, after 18 years, the Americans seem to have got tired, and Trump has committed to withdraw his troops from abroad, and where it's been unduly long. And so the Americans have agreed in a treaty to clear out from Afghanistan completely in 14 months, and a major share within the next 2 months. So, in effect, although there is an elected government in Afghanistan, and that elected government, the personnel have been generally sympathetic to India, because India has done a lot of civilian work in Afghanistan. They have built even the Library of Parliament there. They have assisted in schools, medicines, and so on. So, and Indians generally have long association. Afghanis, our Bombay film music cassettes sell like hotcakes in Afghanistan. So, I mean, India has a presence, but it's not a military presence. What has happened in this agreement between the United States and Taliban is that it was brokered by Pakistan. And it came only after the United States had made an offer to India to post maybe a division or two divisions in Afghanistan. And in return, India could pick any arms, weapons, planes from the warehouses of America. Our government declined that. That is, the BJP government declined that. And as a consequence, the Americans, in pursuit of their objective to get out from Afghanistan, they contacted Pakistan, and Pakistan helped them with Taliban. And ultimately, in Qatar, in Doha, they met and signed an agreement. Now, once this process is completed in the next 14 months, I think it stands to reason, given the ground situation, that Taliban will be able to forcibly take over Afghanistan. And therefore, Afghanistan, Pakistan will become allies. And India then has a problem. It's already, we have problems about the terrorists infiltration from Pakistan, and now it will be doubled. So it's a matter of great concern. So what do we do? Do we dare to make any preemptive action? And if so, what kind of action? Is doing nothing an option? Or is that very dangerous for our national security? These are questions that are being asked around the country, and we need to find answers for that, and which is why we have this discussion today. We also, in February 22nd, 1994, in a parliament resolution of both houses and unanimously, resolved that the remaining portions of Kashmir in foreign occupation will be retrieved by India. And so, obviously, the first candidate would be the Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, or popularly known as POK. And the question is whether we are in a position to do it. In 1947, we went as far as Muzaffarabad. In fact, our flag was to be hoisted, but the English commander of our troops at that time, it was a hangover still continuing, he mischievously hoisted the Pakistani flag instead of the Indian flag, although the Indian troops were all there. But meantime, Jawaharlal Nehru went to the United Nations, and we had to withdraw our troops. And so Muzaffarabad and all these other parts of POK is now in the occupation of Pakistan. So to liberate that, are we in a position today militarily? Is it, if not, what are the things that we need to fill the gaps in? Is it a worthwhile objective to restore it? I know emotionally it is widely held in India that it must be done. After all, otherwise Parliament wouldn't be passing that resolution. It was, in a sense, a a forgotten issue. But Narasimha Rao, evoked it again and got this resolution passed. So we are in this situation where we need the military mind to tell us what are the pros and cons and costs and benefits of securing ourselves, what needs to be done, and how do we back it up on the ground with preparation. So for that, all of us in our team felt that the best person to be invited is Major Arya, and because he is not only a military man, but he has also done strategic studies, and he is well versed in the literature of military literature. And I think, if I'm not wrong, he has something to do with the strategic division of the Republic TV, where he speaks on this issue. So I request Major Arya to please tell us on these two subjects, how should we go about securing our national security?
First of all, thank you, Dr. Swamy, for inviting me. It's a great honor and privilege. You mentioned about Afghanistan, what should be a military strategy, and then you spoke about POK. Is it retrievable or not retrievable? Yes. For a very long time, until recently, as recent as 3 or 4 years back, I have held that India should have nothing to do with Afghanistan. And today I take this opportunity to actually say that I was wrong. You cannot say that we are not interested in war. War is interested in us. Yes. For a very long time, it has been held that Afghanistan is the graveyard of empires. Be that as it may, sir. The thing is that...
just interruption, not for Ranjit Singh.
Yes, not for Ranjit Singh. You're very right. So what has actually happened is, very recently, the Afghan Taliban said that after Eid, they will launch jihad inside India. They threatened India. And as you very rightly mentioned, Dr. Swamiji, that this entire deal that has been brokered by Pakistan is also because there are many factors, but one of the factors is that traditionally Pakistan has been looking for strategic depth. That was the reason why it started this entire terrorism in Kashmir, started terrorism in our Punjab with the bogey of Khalistan, etc. And it is the same thing that it's trying to do with the Jundullah terrorist organization in Iran, and a similar tactics is being played out in Afghanistan beyond the Durand line. Now, what we must do is understand 2-3 things, and this is what comes to mind, sir. Number one, the Americans will leave, and when they leave, there will be a vacuum. The Taliban will take over in all probability. Pakistan is broke, and Afghanistan has a lot of mineral wealth. The one nation that can take advantage is China. So we're looking at a very poisonous cocktail of the Taliban, who are Islamists and religious fanatics. We're looking at Pakistan, which is a nuclear state and highly unstable, and then we're looking at China. Now, none of these are our friends. None of these are our friends. We have to move into Afghanistan. Simply building libraries and their parliament and dams and hospitals will not do. And for a very long time, sir, I've held that, don't go to Afghanistan. But if we don't go to Afghanistan, Afghanistan will come to us.
Yes, right.
It is not simply, sir, a factor of, as many people say, that we get a road to go into Central Asia. That is one part of it, which is why the Chabahar port is there, and which is why our understanding with Iran is present. But also the fact that a dangerous and unstable Afghanistan is dangerous even for India. How do we put in troops? Can we put in troops? It would largely, I would say, but I will have to qualify it. So I say yes, number one. But how to do it? If we get a guaranteed way in and out. In the army, we call them lines of communication and supply. For example, we know that various times when America used the Karachi port, and all through Pakistan, they used to put or send their military material, to go deep inside Afghanistan through the Torkham Gate. Whenever they had a problem with Pakistan, Pakistan would, so to say, switch off the tap. And then the Americans would have to spend billions of dollars sending it by air. So this is one danger that we would like. And secondly, also the fact that Afghanistan has always been unstable. What America did wrong was they tried to stabilize Afghanistan. Now, we are people, America doesn't have too much of a history anyway. They are a very, very young nation. India is thousands and thousands of years old, and we have our books to tell us that if Afghanistan is unstable, let it remain unstable. Let us find stability within that instability. Dr. Swamy, sir, I don't know if I'm making sense here, but what I'm trying to say
I understand what you're saying. Yeah, go ahead.
So what I'm trying to say is that don't try to reform Afghanistan. Don't try to say that there will be a democracy. Karzai has been known very widely as the mayor of Afghanistan, or mayor of Kabul, rather. He used to be called the mayor of Kabul, and Karzai would be called the mayor of Kabul. That is because the Americans have traditionally wanted to bring democracy. Afghanistan does not want democracy.
Yes.
The Afghans have traditionally respected force.
Yes.
So let us understand what they respect and what they want.
Yes.
And this is one part of it, sir. And I think it's only a matter of time, months or years, before India will have to send some sort of military manpower inside Afghanistan. I do not know what the construct of that force will be and how the ingress and egress routes or entering and exiting will be managed. Yes. But I don't think we can avoid it for too long, sir. I don't think we can avoid it for too long.
Right.
And as far as the POK things that you mentioned about the parliamentary resolution,
yes,
for Pakistan occupied Kashmir, a lot of it has to do with emotions. You're very right in India that we must take over. Actually, Pakistan occupied Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan is where the China-Pakistan economic corridor actually comes.
Yes.
China has already pumped in around $50 billion, and they aim to pump in many more $1 billion into this. Before we went live, sir, we were speaking about the Malacca Straits, and we were speaking about how this is very important. And this is an aim by China to find an alternate route for its energy supplies, for sending its finished goods to the Middle East, etc., all over the world. This is an alternate route. The economic corridor will never come up like the way Pakistanis think it will. They think it's a gold mine. They think it's something that will create jobs and make Pakistan a rich country. They clearly don't understand China the way you do, Dr. Swamy, sir. You understand China, you understand the language. They don't understand China. It seems that... so I think the solution here is, yes, we must take over POK. It will be a mixture of diplomacy. It must be a mixture of economic sanctions. And it will also be about destabilizing Pakistan from within. There are fault lines within Pakistan. The Shia-Sunni divide, the Deobandi-Barelvi divide. There are the Seveners, there are the Twelvers, there are the Ahle Hadith. And there are so many other people. There is the Baloch freedom struggle that is happening. The Sindhis are waking up. The Muhajirs are there. Even the southern Punjab, the Saraiki region is waking up. So everybody is pulling at the seams. And as I say very often, sir, Pakistan will never explode, but there is every chance of Pakistan imploding. A lot of Indians who are part of the so-called Aman Ki Asha Brigade, who mean well, but I think they're slightly woolly-headed. They think that, if you speak nicely to Pakistan, everything will be okay. I think, Dr. Swamy, sir, the more you hammer Pakistan, the better it is going to be. As long as we keep on hammering them into the ground, we will be safe. As far as POK is concerned, sir, we get POK by destabilizing Pakistan. We are not going to ask our 14, 15, and 16 Corps of the Northern Command to walk into Pakistan. There is a certain nuclear threshold that Pakistan has. Yes. And there are enough crazy people inside Pakistan who may at least threaten to use it so that the international community starts interfering, if not actually use it, sir.
Yeah.
Destabilize Pakistan, sir. And then approach it from that direction is what I would think.
Right. Well, Major, let me now ask you some hypothetical questions. Do you think we are in a position to create a situation where Baluchistan decides to secede from Pakistan?
So, yes and no. When I say yes, I mean that there are enough elements within the Baloch society which do not want anything to do with Pakistan. And they also know Baloch, because I have many Baloch friends and I'm in touch with them, both inside Pakistan and abroad. And Dr. Swamy, one thing they're very clear about is that nationalism, Baloch nationalism, has so far trumped radical Islam in Balochistan.
Yes.
There is a very strong Pashtun element. There are Pashtuns inside Balochistan. And then there is the Balochistan, which is inside Iran. So Balochistan is divided between Iran and Pakistan. If we forget about the Iranian part for a minute, sir, hypothetically speaking, yes, it is possible. Yes, it is possible. But India needs to do more than talk. So far, we have been talking only, sir. We are all out there, sir. Unfortunately.
That's our weakness. That's our weakness.
Absolutely, sir. We announce that Balochistan will be free. It's not going to be free unless we put our money where the mouth is. Whether it's about training the Balochis, whether it's about setting up a Baloch embassy in exile in India, or the government in exile in India, my apologies. Whether it's about putting embassies all over the world, whether it's about going to Harvard, Oxford, these top universities, and actually speaking about Baloch, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I found in the United States, in New York, the Baluchis have been given permission by the United States government to open a human rights center to highlight atrocities, human rights atrocities in Balochistan. I think we can easily do the same thing, and the Pakistanis can't object. We'll say, you didn't object to the Americans, why are you objecting to us? So that would be a first step, because we raised hopes when Narendra Modi on 15th August in 2015 from Red Fort announced how Balochistan is being suppressed, and raised and said that we would, we are concerned about it. So there was a lot of expectation, which broke all limits in terms of expectations, and then nothing happened. So I agree with you. We talk a lot, but won't do anything. But whether it's would you think that psychologically, if there was a movement where we took a small step, like setting up a human rights center of Baluchis in Delhi, whether that would intimidate Pakistan or not?
To a little extent, yes. So Pakistan is the only country that I know which suffers from schizophrenia, so the entire country. The way it happens is that Pakistan at one level has a civilian facade. who will go and address these issues like the United Nations, etc. But the power is actually, as you know very well, Dr. Swamy, the power is with General Bajwa, it's with the army.
Yes.
And the army doesn't care what happens. So definitely setting up a human rights cell in India, in New Delhi, will be a welcome first step. But it will be a step in a series of steps that India must. Dr. Swamy,
I agree. What I'm saying is we have not even taken the first step, and this is an easy step to take.
Yes.
And it will, in terms of atmosphere, it will make a difference. And then we have to follow it up with other steps. Let me ask you another question. There's no doubt that if Taliban takes over and then it advances the cause of Islamic terror, United States is going to be nervous. It's not that the United States could not be penetrated. After all, the 9/11 incident clearly shows that the United States was penetrated. People who had gone there to take lessons in how to fly an aeroplane, afterwards converted them into suicide bombers.
Yes.
So United States could, and the United States had shown interest both in terms of in time of Iraq and now, that they would like to partner with India in tackling these hotspots. So should India be proactive and explore with the United States this possibility? Or do you think that we could start probing the Chinese to see whether they would have an informal understanding with us on this issue? My own visits to China, which have been quite regular in the last 30 years, suggest that the Chinese, when their guard is down, are resentful of the fact that in Xinjiang, terrorists trained in Pakistan have found their way through the Karakoram Pass to Xinjiang. And to me at least, because of my long-term association with them, they have been frank in stating that they are disappointed with Pakistan on this issue. However, the Chinese, according to me, are concerned what India will do if there is a confrontation between China and the United States. I may take the liberty to mention that in 1977, when Mr. Morarji Desai asked me that, since you said that you are, I've been told that you have studied China very extensively, you speak the language. Could you tell me whether the Chinese would ever be interested in discussing the border problem with us? Because they were taking the stand at that time, there's nothing to discuss, it's all ours. So I suggested that at that stage, there was a huge confrontation between the Soviet Union, then Soviet Union, and China over an island called Janbadao on the Ussuri River. And the Russians had prepared very substantially to use military force and give a thrashing to the Chinese army. And for that, they had written to India saying that using the Indo-Soviet treaty, that Russian troops should be allowed to come into India and then go to Tibet from India, the underbelly of China, so to speak. And by the time this matter reached some kind of peak, Mrs. Gandhi was defeated here, and Mr. Desai became Prime Minister. So I told him that if you convey to the Chinese that in the event there is a confrontation between the Soviets and China, troops on the ground, India will be neutral. And in that case, the Chinese would be willing to discuss with us the border question as a gesture. And that's how I made my first official trip after 1962. I was the first Indian politician formally on behalf of the government to go to China. Mr. Vajpayee went a year later as foreign minister. And I put this to them and they responded immediately. And the thawing with China started with that. I'm in a minority, an hopeless minority, when I suggest that it is possible that in dealing with terror in Pakistan and Afghanistan, it is possible to bring the Chinese on board, but it will not be just a bilateral matter only. It will be a international matter in which our relations with the United States, and in the event of their confrontation with China, United States, the role India plays will be a factor. I don't know whether the country is ready to accept that, because after 1962, it has been we have been thoroughly brainwashed that the entire thing was a perfidy of China, like this corona virus is also being entirely ascribed to China. So it may take a lot of persuasion. I also have been successful in getting them to open Kailash Mansarovar. And on the border roads, in my discussion with China in the last 2 years, when I said, why do you want to go through POK? You come down from where Kailash Mansarovar is, cross into Uttar Pradesh, and then go straight to Bombay. And then you get the ocean. Or you come from Kunming via Rangoon and then to Calcutta and then get the ocean. And they were very, very enthusiastic about that. They said, yes, we'd like to discuss that. So we have two options. Either we decide to make an agreement with the Americans that we'll send the troops and they give us the weapons, or with the Chinese that the two of us have to deal with Pakistan. And we have to make sure that the government of Afghanistan is an independent government and not a terrorist government, because that will affect their Xinjiang also. They will also have this problem. So I am sorry to take up so much of your time, but the fact is, I'm saying that you are now in a situation where you just more or less painted a stalemate. That we should do this, but are we going to do this? Have we got the wherewithal to do it? So now I'm suggesting you another way of going about to deal with this problem. And what is your opinion on that?
Sir, absolutely. There are two things that have taken place, Dr. Swamy. First of all, after the 1967 skirmish,
yes, that's right.
There has been no bullet fired along the line of actual control.
Yes.
There have been fistcuffs and there have been a few odd kicks, throwing of rocks, but this is typically not how armies behave. So if two armies are facing off and they're not shooting, which means they want to talk, the Chinese want to talk.
Yes.
So rather than getting into this rut that 62 happened, what has happened in the past. We cannot undo it. But the fact of the matter is that unless we speak to the Chinese, there is no going forward on this, simply because China is willing to talk. And the fact that China has again not picked up weapons, it's not like the line of control where there is firing and killing every day. And 1967 is more than 50 years. It's been a very peaceful border. And our media, unfortunately, covers mostly when we say the Chinese have come inside India. So there is this thing in breaking news, China. Not many people know that we go across. I was posted there. I have been into China so many times.
Many people have told me that.
They gave us Chinese chocolates. And we gave them almonds, I remember. And I don't smoke, but they had cigarettes. They exchanged cigarettes, and it was all right. These things keep on happening on the border. I think China wants to talk. Very interesting, Dr. Swamy, what you mentioned about Afghanistan. Yes. This is something that we need to start exploring and get rid of these cobwebs in our mind. That, ये चीज ऐसे ही हो सकती है और दूसरी तरीके से नहीं हो सकती. It's not like that. So, while Afghanistan will remain unstable, and I'm saying will remain unstable because it has been unstable for the past 1,000 years. So, we haven't seen a stable Afghanistan for a very long time. You very rightly mentioned when Maharaja Ranjit Singh came and this entire thing was under his control, but that was for a short period of time. And after him, the Sikh empire collapsed after Maharaja Ranjit Singh.
That's right.
So what we need to do is absolutely talk with the Chinese. I think Chinese will have a big role to play in post-America Afghanistan. And India should partner with the Chinese. The Chinese can't do it alone. And the Pakistanis will always have an angle, sir.
Yeah.
Pakistanis will always have an angle. Their angle, even in 1989, 1990, when terrorism started in Kashmir, they took Afghans from Afghanistan who were there in the refugee camps near Peshawar, and they push them into Kashmir. And this is exactly what they're planning to do right now. That is what the Afghan Taliban spokesperson has said, that they're launching a jihad against India after Eid. So I think China is the whip that can put Pakistan in its place. And if there are common interests between India and China and Afghanistan, I think a large part of the problem may have been sorted. Maybe we can have a joint force with the Chinese. Why not? If we partner with them in the United Nations in Africa, why not in Afghanistan?
That's right.
Chinese put up core, we put up core, and let's look after Afghanistan.
Yeah. The civilian leadership, political leadership of Afghanistan is totally in favor of India and China coming together.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely.
Whether it's Karzai had come here and had a long dinner meeting with me. And he told me very clearly that they don't trust the Americans. They can leave tomorrow. This he told me 2 years ago. And that's exactly what has happened. I said, Americans making an agreement with Taliban, I can't even think of it. He said, no, you see, it'll happen. And that's what happened. So I think because we are all then neighbors, it's China, India, and the Afghan civilian population, civilian leadership. These, if they come together, Pakistan will be thoroughly isolated. Either they'll fall in line or, they'll learn a lesson. So that's one option. I'm not saying how it's going. I know that things which people told me China will never agree, I got them to agree. One was Kailash Mansarovar. They're a communist country, and they agreed, and they have never stopped that particular route. They have stopped the Sikkim route, but the route that I got open, they have never changed anything. Similarly, as a commerce minister, I signed a trade agreement with them, which for 10 years they were refusing to sign. And so they are a very sentimental people, not cold calculating as most people think. Cold calculating the Americans. It's all cost-benefit analysis. But the Chinese are very emotional people, and I think, unfortunately, the 62 has still clouded our mind, and Henderson Brooks' report is not yet being released, so people really don't know what all happened. But I think I'm glad to hear from you that this is an option that we could explore. And I think on this line, we should move forward.
Absolutely.
Now, the issue also is this, that the matter of jihad and the matter of what they call as the ISIS caliphate. I mean, that's got a lot of following now in Pakistan and Afghanistan. Now, this caliphate had always, the caliphate was once defeated by the Gujaratis and the Marathis and the Andhras coming together and going to Sindh and defeating them. That was the time of Umar. And Umar got a shock of his life and didn't live very much after that. So, but it's always been a goal. And the ISIS very clearly has said that India is an unfinished business for them. So I think Afghanistan is just not only a question of Pakistan gaining a foothold, but I think it's a very important angle in the fight against jihadi terrorism.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. If I may, Dr. Swamy, add a couple of sentences here. Not just in Pakistan and Afghanistan, but also within India. We see a lot of people from Kerala going to fight jihad, and it's there. Kerala is very badly afflicted with this disease of the caliphate. And there are many other parts in India. In Kashmir, if you see, all those terrorists were there, they're waving the ISIS flag. So clearly there is an ideology at play here, an ideology that is present within India. And I say this very often, and people don't take it seriously, but people are like that, sir. But I often say that the doors of India's forts have always been open from the inside, sir. We've always had people inside who are opening our forts from inside. And this is something to watch out against.
Yeah. Jagdish, you want to say something? Or
Dr. Swamy, Dr. Swamy, our topic is POK and others. just wanted your view. What is so sacrosanct of the McMahon line when we deal with China? Can you just give us a brief thing about some places it is acceptable, some places not acceptable?
Yeah.
Tell us something on the McMahon line.
Well, about 4 years ago, I was in a in a cabinet, a Chinese cabinet as a research institute where they invite select politicians to meet other politicians, Chinese politicians. This question of the border came up, and they said to me, "You are a man who has been anti-imperialist. How can you even think of McMahon line, which was an imperialist line?" So I said to them, "Yes, normally I would agree with you that it's an imperialist line. I would have touched it. But I found that with Burma, you signed an agreement in 1963 where you have declared that McMahon line is the international boundary between Burma and Myanmar and China. And so you have accepted the McMahon line, and McMahon didn't draw two lines. He drew only one line, which went across to Burma also. And so if you have accepted with Burma, why can't you accept it with India?" And the minister across, I think Jagdish, you were there, I think, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, yes. It was in 2009.
Yeah, that's right. That lady who minister, she was so shocked. Then she turned around to her seniors, and then they whispered to her that it's a fact. So then she said, "Well, then we can discuss that little later." So as far as McMahon line is concerned, not an inch we can give the Chinese, because they have accepted McMahon line with Myanmar, so they must accept it with India. The only issue is how we are going to deal with that portion in outside China. And I think the Chinese have had originally built that road because they have wanted a connection with from Tibet to Xinjiang, but now they have got enough roads, and this particular road is redundant. And I think in a comprehensive, the Chinese are not going to discuss the border separately. That I know their mindset. They can make it as part of a general package of political understanding. See, after all, we have to be very clear. Suddenly, I don't know what happened to our government. For so many years, we have never regarded Taiwan as a separate country. And all of a sudden, we are now discussing the WHO, they should sit as a separate country. Now, that's a game two can play. Tomorrow, if the Chinese start saying, okay, Kashmir should also sit in the United Nations. We'll be, I mean, where does this all end? And especially once you have agreed, whether it was right or wrong, I'm not going into that question. But Taiwan was always regarded by India as an integral part of China. And so Tibet too. In fact, Atal Bihari Vajpayee went to the extent in signing an agreement with China that the Chinese who had partitioned Tibet into 4 parts and 3 parts, they had merged it with surrounding states. So Guangzhou, then Sichuan, and the Vajpayee signed an agreement recognizing that division also. And today's Tibet in China is only 1/4 of the Tibet that we originally agreed to make it an autonomous region of China. So, and now to suddenly turn around, and say, no, we want to break that agreement, means a all-out confrontation. And I don't know whether whether there are better alternatives than that. Yes, sir. Major, do you have any reactions to this?
Absolutely, sir. You're very right. If they have agreed with Myanmar, I think it will not be very, good, if I can say on our part, to say that, okay, you've done it with Myanmar, but don't do it with us. You need to have a standard platform. You do it for them, you do it for us. I absolutely agree with you, sir. That's number one. Number two is that, like you said, China is very emotional. People are very emotional. not the robos that the world makes them out to be. You're saying that because you've studied them very closely. You have friends in China. You've been to China so many times. But from a point of view of an Indian who's never been to China and who's only been fed a certain kind of, so he will not be able to do it. Yet, sir, I would just like to make one statement here from the Ramayana, which says that sir, bhai bin hoy na preet. There is no friendship without fear. So we become strong. And we become China, sir. And then we become friends as equals.
Agreed. Absolutely. There's no question of not developing our friendship with Indonesia on the question of Malacca Strait.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. There's no question in telling Nepal straight away that, listen, if you want to be neutral, we have no problem, but you can't lean that way.
Yes.
And I'm glad that my initiative in Sri Lanka has achieved that purpose. Now, Rajapaksa was totally leaning towards them because we were chasing him because he had finished off LTTE. So the Congress party and the DMK government wanted to punish him. So, but I brought him when he had lost the election, and I brought him here. And there was a meeting between him and the Prime Minister for more than an hour. And that I think that India is against Sri Lanka or against the Rajapaksas, that has been removed. And today, the Chinese and the Indians have the same status in Sri Lanka, and which is all that we want. We don't want them to necessarily become our camp followers, but they should not become anybody else's camp followers.
Absolutely.
I have two questions, Dr. Swamy.
Yes.
One is what is Russia's influence in that area? Because Russia had a bad experience with Afghanistan. So, I mean, in the future, what do you see? I mean, Major Gaurav can also jump in. So, first question. Okay, you finish. Then I'll ask.
Okay, I answer that, Major, and then the Major also should hear his input. I would say that was Soviet Union, and so they had Kazakhstan, they had Uzbekistan, they had all that to get into Afghanistan. Today, they are nowhere there. The Uzbekistan couldn't care less about Russia, or Kazakhstan couldn't care less about Russia. So Russia is nowhere in this particular region. And I think we have made a big mistake by buying S-400, although it's a good machine, but all its software is Chinese. And the Americans were not going to sell you any weapons because the Chinese, they are very sensitive about the Chinese, high-tech instruments that are put in various places. Look at what they're doing on Huawei. Most of the world is accepted Huawei, but the Chinese Americans say, no, we won't accept it because it will give enormous power for the Chinese to penetrate our country. So, I think we must understand that in the Soviet Union is no more there, and if it's a question of buying American arms or the Russian arms, I would any day prefer buying American arms.
Absolutely, totally concur with Dr. Swamy because we have bought significant Russian equipment. In fact, in the Indian Army, the majority of our equipment is Russian, and truth be told, it's not very good equipment.
Yeah.
The quality is not very good, and the Russians, once they have sold equipment to you, can be extremely tough to deal with because they know that you have their equipment.
Yes.
Today, if we have foreign exchange to buy equipment, as far as the S-400 also is concerned, this whole software issue about the Chinese, it's also how one equipment marries with the other equipment.
Right.
S-400 will not work in isolation. It will be part of an air defense web. Now, you can't have some of the software that is Chinese and some of the software that is American. The Americans will forever be jittery. They will forever be jittery.
Yes, right. That's right. Yes, Arvind?
Thank you very much.
No, there's a second question.
Gautam, Arya.
Wait a minute. One more question was there.
Yeah. The second
Ramesh,
part.
You had another question?
Yeah. I have the second question.
Yeah.
I know we have talked about this, but this whole debacle, I would put squarely blame only on Nehru because this debacle could have been completely avoided. This nonsense that we're dealing with today called Pakistan could have been completely avoided. But how do we get away from that severe impact? I mean, I just want both of your opinions saying that, because it has caused a huge impact for 70 years of dealing with this cancer called Pakistan.
General, I mean, Major, you deserve to be general, but anyway,
No.
you would have been if you didn't have that accident.
Sir, I would like to say that as far as Pakistan is concerned, this entire thing about Nehru, which is being spoken so much, I think it's more about personal ambition. The idea that the world should see me as a great statesman, a larger-than-life figure who changed history, at the cost of India.
Yeah.
So he wants to be a great statesman, wanted to be. I have nothing to say, but today, if you go to the National War Memorial, you know, all the names written in the National War Memorial, 70-80% of them are because of Nehru's flawed policies. We have lost thousands upon thousands of our soldiers fighting in Kashmir. You know, this complete area of the left side of 14 Corps, 15 Corps, 16 Corps, the entire Northern Command minus the line of actual control of the Chinese. It has cost us deeply. And the only thing, and I believe this very strongly, many people say it's a romantic idea. It is not possible, but I believe it is possible. And I hold fast that there can be no friendship with Pakistan. There can be no friendship with Pakistan. Pakistan has been raised, has been brought up, has been created on the basis of Hindu hatred. This is the truth that we must accept. And, you know, whether you watch their television programs, whether you watch their movies or any other cultural things that Pakistan creates, you can see this. It's very blatant. It's in your face. They will never accept. Now, all these people, this people talk about Ghazwa-e-Hind. It's spoken about in social media. The problem is not whether it's true or false. The problem is that a vast majority of Pakistanis believe in Ghazwa-e-Hind. They're willing to send their sons to fight and die in Kashmir and the rest of India. Today, it is the Indian army that is stopping those terrorists in Kashmir. Otherwise, you would be having, like previously, it's only in the last few years that we have managed to stop them in Kashmir. Otherwise, you know very well, Mumbai happened, 1993 Mumbai happened, 26/11 happened. So many things, Delhi blasts have happened. These things will continue till the time Pakistan pays a very, very disproportionate price to its adventurism in India. This will not stop unless we make it stop.
One short point, if I may. Foreign policy can be structured on intention that you perceive of the other side. But defense policy must always be based on the capacity of the other side, whether they are your friends or your enemies. If they have a capacity to come in large numbers across the mountains and hit you, you better have the capacity to stop it. Just because they are you imagine them to be your bye-bye, therefore you just don't allow defense expenditure to be even the minimal. So intentions for foreign policy and capacity for defense policy, that should be our approach to this problem.
Arvind,